Welcome back to another video. My name is Sean and I'm a registered dietitian. Today we are going to be talking about rate-based versus volume-based tube feeds. So in my prior nutrition support videos, we've done rate-based feeds. Rate-based feeds are just, it's tube feeding that's done per hour. So you might do 50 an hour, 60 an hour, 70 an hour. The problem with that is if a patient has to go to a procedure or for whatever reason the tube feeding gets turned off, they're missing out on those calories and protein and vitamins and minerals that they would otherwise get if it was ongoing. Volume-based tube feeding is a great way to actually solve that problem because with volume-based tube feeding, there's a set amount that the patient needs to receive within a 24-hour time period. And so if the tube feeding is turned off at any point during the day, the nurse is able to adjust the rate of the tube feed to account for what they didn't get when it was turned off. So the best way to illustrate this is going to be with an example. So in my previous video, we had a patient whose needs were 750 calories, 75 to 80 grams of protein, and we decided that Jevity 1.2 is a good formula for her. So what would we do for the rate-based tube feeding? So that's what we determined in the previous video. And in the previous video, we determined that her goal was 60 milliliters per hour. We know that 60 milliliters per hour times 24 hours times 1.2 calories per milliliter gives us her needs. Kcals. So we know this is the right formula, and the goal is 60 an hour because it gives her the adequate amount of calories, and then just for entertainment purposes, we'll determine the protein, 80 grams of protein. So we know that this rate-based formula would be running at 60 mils an hour for 24 hours to provide these needs. If you have any questions on how I actually did that, in the description I'll post the video so you can watch how I do this math. But we've determined that the rate-based feed would be 60 an hour. So the question is, how much does that give her per day in terms of volume? So this at 60 an hour gives her a goal volume of 1440 milliliters. So 1440 milliliters provides this much. The problem is, again, if it gets turned off, then she's always going to get less than this. Now, you can adjust the rate and say, I'm going to run it at 65 an hour. I'm going to run it at 70 an hour. And then that way, if it's turned off during the day, I've already accounted for that. And that's a great way to do it. Some hospitals do estimate nutrition support based on a 22-hour runtime rather than a 24-hour runtime. But here in this hospital, what we found is that from switching to volume-based feeds instead of rate-based feeds, we increased the daily calorie provisions from 66%. So our patients were meeting 66% of their needs here on rate-based to 91% of their needs on volume-based. So our patients were receiving more of their nutrition support by switching to this method. So what is volume-based? Volume-based is how much volume does the patient need of a given formula in a given day. Typically, it's going to be by 50 mil increments. So you wouldn't do a volume-based feed for 1440. I would round up. So what you do is you take this, you take their calorie needs divided by the concentration, and then you round up to the nearest 50 mil increment. So 1750 divided by 1.2 gives us 1458 milliliters per day. That's a terrible day. Cool. But I'm not going to give them a weird number. So we'll just say 1450 mils per day is close enough. So 1450 mils per day times 1.2. So this person will get 1740 kcals. This is your multiplier, your 1.4. So we can do the same thing for 55.5 grams. We can determine how much protein they're getting. Remember, if you take your calorie needs divided by the concentration divided by 1,000, you will get the liters per day of formula provided. And then you can round up to your nearest 50 if you so choose. So we'll do our 1.45 times 55.5 gives us 81 grams of protein. Cool. So I know that Jevity 1.2 using a volume-based tube feeding of 1450 milliliters per day will meet this patient's calorie and protein needs. So basically the way that this works is every hospital does it differently, but the way we do it here is at 6 a.m. the tube feed pump gets reset to 0. And then during the day, as the formula is ran, they can adjust it as needed. And that's what this will look like. So let's make some space and I'll show you how you do the volume-based tube feeding. So this is how you do the volume-based tube feeding. So when you are using a tube feeding pump, the pump is going to ask you what rate you want to run it at. But we're doing volume-based. So the question is, what rate do you run the tube feeding out if you're doing volume-based tube feeding? So what you do is you take the daily volume divided by 24 gives you the rate. And remember, we're running this from 0600 to 0600. So at 6 in the morning, the tube feeding pump gets reset. So if I'm a nurse and it's 6 a.m., I reset the tube feeding pump. I don't care what rate the formula is running at. We take the daily goal volume, which the dietitian, us, has determined to be 1450. So this is 1450. So 1450 divided by 24 gives us a rate of 60.4 mils an hour. So the nurse will run this tube feeding at 60 an hour. Now let's say the patient was getting a CT scan here. So off. It was turned off for an hour. You know, let's just, for illustration purposes, let's say it was off for 2 hours. So from 0600 to 1200, it was running at 60 an hour. So the pump, what the pump is going to say, the pump is going to say that it's administered 360 mils so far today. So if I'm a dietitian or I'm a nurse and I'm looking at the tube feeding pump, it will tell you this is how much formula I've already given the patient per day. So to determine the new goal rate, you take the daily volume minus what's already provided divided by the remaining time till 0600. So the way that this works is it's 2 in the afternoon. Our patient is back from their MRI or their CT scan. The pump tells me that they've already given 360 mils per hour. Now, if this was a rate-based formula, the nurse would just turn it back to 60 an hour and the patient would just be out of calories and protein for those 2 hours. But with rate-based feeding, we're going to make up the lost volume. How do you do that? Well, your new volume is going to have to be a little bit higher to make up for that. So what rate is that new, is that pump going to be programmed to? So here, our patient needs 1450 mils per day. It's a little light on that. Can we see that? 1450 mils per day, but they've already got 360. Remember, this pump was running from 6 till noon at 60 an hour. So they've already gotten 360. Now it's 2 in the afternoon. How much more time do we have? We have until 0600 to get 1450. So from 2 in the afternoon till 6 in the morning is going to be 16 hours. So you've got 2. I usually go 2 in the afternoon till 6 p.m. and then I add 12. So 2 to 6 is 4 hours. Add 12, that's 16 hours. Divided by 16 hours remaining until the next morning when the pump is reset. So our new goal rate is going to be 68 mils per hour. So what we do is at 6 in the morning, you take their daily volume and you divide by the hours remaining. So if you use this formula and it's 0600, you haven't provided anything, and the remaining time is 24 hours. So that's how you get your 1450 divided by 24, rate of 60. If it's turned off for 2 hours, we've missed out on those 2 hours. So you take your total daily volume, which is 1450, minus the 360 that the patient already got from 6 till noon. And then here you have 16 hours left in the day until the pump is reset. So the new rate's going to be 68 mils per hour. And what we found doing this way is that now the patient is going to receive more volume than they would just running it at a rate-based tube feed. That's a lot of information. If you have any questions, post them down below. I will be making more videos about this. So if you do have any comments, anything that you really want me to touch on in a new video, let me know. I'll make sure to address that. In the meanwhile, sit tight. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up for staying late at work to make these videos for you. And I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.